Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to take a close look at the UK's financial situation, and you'll see why some of the data is setting off some serious alarm bells.
Yeah, this quote really hits the nail on the head. It's not just that the UK has debt, lots of countries do. The thing is, when you dig into the numbers, it's different. It's truly in a league of its own, and not necessarily in a good way. So think of the UK's economy like a car dashboard. Right now, according to this analysis, there are five big red warning lights flashing. Let's go through them one by one. All right, warning number one, and it's a big one. It's all about the massive amount of debt that has to be either paid back or refinanced in just 1 year. Okay, take a look at this. The first thing that just jumps out at you is that red bar for the UK, right? It's not just a little taller, it's absolutely towering over everyone else. We're talking about a massive, massive outlier here. So let's put a number on that. 196%. What does that even mean? Well, think of it like this. For every £100 the entire UK economy generates in a year, it owes £196 in short-term foreign debt. The debt that's due this year is almost double the country's entire economic output for the year. And that huge number brings us right to the second warning light. See, it's not just the size of the debt, it's the timing. Because so much of it is short-term, it creates this relentless pressure. They constantly have to be out there looking for new lenders day in and day out. Get this, an incredible 70% of all the UK's external debt is short-term. That means the country is constantly having to roll over its borrowing. It's a bit like paying off your Visa with a new MasterCard, but on a massive national scale every single day. And you can imagine, right? That makes you incredibly vulnerable. Even a tiny dip in investor confidence could cause huge problems. Okay, so alarms 3 and 4 really go together, and they paint a pretty risky picture. You've got the UK funding its spending gap with what's called hot money, fast-moving investments that can vanish in a heartbeat. And it's doing this while its own financial safety net is, well, you'll see, it's shockingly small. These two charts really show you the scale of that risk. On the left, you see just how much they depend on that hot money to plug the gap. But look at the chart on the right. That one is just wow. It shows the UK's short-term debts are more than 60 times bigger than its emergency cash reserves. That's like having a tiny little bucket to fight a giant fire. The safety net is just not proportional to the risk. And that brings us to the fifth and final alarm bell. It's all about that safety net we just mentioned, because when you compare it to other countries, it's worryingly small. So the UK's foreign exchange reserves, its emergency fund basically, is just 3% of its GDP. Now, to give you some perspective, just look at what other big economies like Japan or China hold. It's a tiny fraction. The analysis calls it threadbare, and you know what? Looking at this chart, that feels like exactly the right word. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. You've got this huge, constant need to borrow short-term hot money from other countries. At the same time, your own emergency savings are tiny. It creates this picture of extreme vulnerability. And remember, this is all happening while interest rates, the cost of borrowing, are going up around the world. So you might be wondering, with all this, why hasn't the pound just collapsed? It's a fair question. And the answer seems to come down to this idea of systemic importance. The thinking is that London's financial hub is just so woven into the global system that nobody can afford to let it fail. So in a way, the currency isn't being held up by confidence, it's being propped up by fear of what would happen if it fell. I think this quote from the analysis just says it all, doesn't it? Balancing on a tightrope in a storm. It perfectly captures the situation. Trying to manage a country's finances with these kinds of pressures, it's not just hard, it's an incredibly risky, high-stakes performance. And that really leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. If London really is too central to fail, what does this financial tightrope walk mean for the rest of us? What happens to the global economy if the person on that tightrope stumbles?